Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's good to see you today. Happy Thursday. Happy end of the Jewish fall holiday cycle and a little break from holidays if you're holidayed out. It's nice to see you all. I'm going to give everyone a sec to get through the door. Okay. My name is Rachel Scheinerman. I edit My Jewish Learning and the Daily Dose of Talmud, and you are, of course, in the Thursday Daf Yomi Week in Review, where we spend 30 minutes running through what happened in the last 7 days of Talmud study. We're, of course, deep into Bava Batra right now, and as you know, we are joined by a rotating cast of really wonderful teachers for this class, and this morning, I'm very happy to introduce somebody new to you all. This is Rabbi John Kelson. Rabbi Kelson is the Chief Education Officer at Drisha, where a seminary of Talmud study in New York, but he lives in Jerusalem. He's joining us from Jerusalem today. So welcome, Rabbi Kelson, and go ahead, let's get started.
Okay, thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you. I'll just note, we have locations both in the States and also here in Israel. We have a yeshiva and other programs, Drisha, that is, and it's a pleasure to be with you all. I just started teaching for My Jewish Learning in a few different venues, and this is my first time with you in this Daf Yomi forum. So I'm happy to be with you. Okay, so let me just let's note that we are indeed, as Rachel noted, we are in the 8th chapter of Bava Batra, which is the third part of the tractates opening up Seder Nizukin, right? The order of quote unquote damages. Actually, it seems likely or that the first 2 tractates, Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, and Bava Batra, actually were one large tractate. That's why they're called Bava means gate. So the first gate, the middle gate, and the last gate, they actually comprise one large tractate. But it's worth noting that here in this chapter, we've been dealing with chapter Yesh No Chalin, the laws of inheritance. Like just like a show off, just like a thumbs up, or just who here is, I don't know, I have no sense if you're doing Daf Yomi on your own, or this is your way of sort of dropping in without doing just a show of thumbs if you do Daf Yomi. A whole bunch of you. Okay, so though, and some not. Okay, excellent. So, as you know, we're learning here the laws of inheritance, and I want to just first note that it makes a lot of sense that the laws of inheritance would be situated within Tractate Bava Batra. Why is that? Because you actually could have thought that's actually kind of funny if it's called the laws of damages. What does inheritance do with damages, right? Nezikin. But it's been argued that Bava Batra, as opposed to Bava Kama and Bava Metzia, Bava Batra has a specific focus, which is not as much responding to tension and fighting about possessions and other such things, but trying to avoid that type of fighting, right? To actually find a way to live together with equitable distribution of resources, be they Real estate, like living together in as neighbors, as in the first chapter, the first chapter of Bava Batra, as neighbors, or in terms of equitable business practices, trying to find a way, as opposed to, again, Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, which assume in their stories that there's already been damages, or already are disagreements and fighting. Think about the first Mishnah of Bava Metzia. 2 are seizing onto talit together. This one says it's mine, this one says it's mine, etc. We assume they're fighting. But in Bava Batra, we try to imagine a world or structure, a universe, which avoids such conflicts from the get-go. That is to say, to set up a system which can avoid strife rather than having to deal with it, resolve strife which is already present. And therefore, the laws of inheritance, I do think, fit in there because Yishnochalin, right? Uman because the laws of inheritance, the notion of inheritance, assumedly at least part of the reason for the institution of inheritance, of Yerusha, of inheritance at all, is to avoid the potential for fighting over assets left over by the deceased. I mean, you could imagine a universe where there's no such thing as inheritance, where when one passes away, their assets, their estate is, I don't know, goes back to the communal pool or left open for grabs or something. But obviously that might lead to a chaotic world, a world of strife. So assumedly part of the reason that there is such an institution called Yerusha, institution called inheritance, is to avoid that situation and set up a system in which there is a sort of predictability and a structure which guides the division of assets after somebody passes away and no longer holds on to them. And that also speaks to not only the institution of inheritance of Yerusha writ large, but also the parameters of Yerusha, the parameters, right, of inheritance. So as to say, not only that there's such a thing as inheritance, but like our parak, tries to get into in detail, who inherits, how do they inherit, in what order, and such. So with that, let me screen share and jump into the Mishnayot, and my just to frame again, and then my goal with our time together is just to highlight a couple points and maybe draw a theme which emerges, I think, kind of like a thread through our pages today. Our pages today we're reviewing from 122 Kuf Chaf Bet, 122 up until 128 of Bava Batra. Okay, so I have here actually a little source sheet. I'll put it into the chat, but I'm also going to try to screen share that as we're going. So let me put it right here. Okay. Okay, can everybody see that on the screen share? Okay, great. So, okay, here we go. So again, actually, I think I won't read all this Mishnah together, but we're dealing with the 8th chapter of Bava Batra. That's where our sugyot are found. Yesh nochlin u'manchilin, the laws of inheritance, who inherits, in what order, etc., the order of precedence. I'm not going to get into all this in detail. And the Mishnayot that we are, the sugyot are built around for our sugyot today, basically 3 and 4, discuss one, the specifics of the inheritance of Benot Slachad's daughters, right, who took 3 portions of land inheritance in the land, right, their father's portion, the portion that their father themselves had inherited, and also a double portion because he was a firstborn. And then the next Mishnah goes on to say that both the son and the daughter of deceased are included in the laws of inheritance, but there are some differences there, which I won't get into in this very moment. But these are the Mishnah which form the backdrop for our sugyot today, our discussion today. What I do want to note is as follows, and I basically have 3 main citations here. I'll go one by one. On 122a, Kuf Chaf Bet, there is an extended narrative, an agadah, right, a sort of a non-halachic section of the Talmud here, and in the course of that conversation, which it's on 122, and also in our site from 123, we have this really interesting piece. There's a Tannaitic text which teaches that unlike the divisions in this world, and here they're discussing the divisions of the land at the time of Joshua, but unlike what they call that as Chalukasha Olam Hazeh, they call it that those are divisions of this world. Right? The way that land division works in this world, where different tribes and different families receive different land portions in the land of Israel, according to the book of Joshua, Chalukah Sholam Haba, the division which is anticipated in the world to come will be different, right? In the Messianic era, in some future period, the division will look different. In this world, let's read the English. In this world, says the text, if a person has a field of grain, then he does not have a field for an orchard. And if he has a field for an orchard, he does not have a field of grain, meaning that the land of Israel is varied in its topography. Different things grow in different parts of the land, right? And if you received a portion of land in one area, let's say where it's conducive for growing grain, you wouldn't necessarily have access to the type of soil and environment which would allow you to, plant an orchard. And vice versa, if you had an orchard, you can't have it all, basically, in terms of the land and in terms of the divisions along the lines, right? Because the climate and variety of soil is different. But in the world to come, you can have your cake and eat it too. Olam haba, in the world to come, you will find no person who does not have a portion in the land, and a portion, assumingly, in the land of Israel, but it doesn't actually say that in the text, right? Who would have a portion which is in the mountain and in the lowland and in the valley. Right? And as a proof text from the book of Ezekiel, indicating that everyone's portion will be the same. And actually, unlike in the book of Joshua, where the portions are divvied out, via human intermediary, when it comes to the Olam Haba, the future period, the Talmud imagines the holy, blessed Hakadosh Baruch Hu will distribute to them personally. God's self will distribute the portions in the world to come. So what is this text saying, and why is it saying it? Here we have this text in the middle of a conversation about Yerusha, about inheritance, which speaks not of this world but the next world, not Olam Hazeh but Olam Haba, and highlights an anticipated distinction between the two periods. In this world, you have distinction of allocations, right? And along with those distinctions of allocations, this person has this type of allocation, this person has a different type of allocation. They're mutually exclusive. If you have A, you can't have B. If you have B, you can't have A. In the world to come, we imagine an allocation where you can have it all. And if you can have it all, and you don't have to make those choices of distinction, then that means that everyone can receive the same amount, right? The same, not only amount, I shouldn't say, but the same type, right? Same quality and type of inheritance. It's interesting to wonder, why is the Talmud making this point? And I would suggest that the Talmud here is highlighting a potential, something about the human, this worldly Olam Hazeh contours of inheritance, which are, if not, maybe they are intuitive or not intuitive, but they're not the only way of thinking about things, and they have their own problematics, right? And one of those elements of those problematics is that if we're dividing, if we're indeed dividing assets the way we're dividing it, it's not always going to end up fair, or as fairly as it could. It may avoid strife. It may, sort of secure a peaceful transition of assets. Here it's talking about allocation of land. But in the future, what that will end up with potentially is you have peaceful transition allocation of assets and such, but not necessarily in a way which is ultimately fair and equal. And that is just with the way, the Talmud understands that this is the way our world works. Our world works to an extent. There is some sort of finitude of resources, and indeed you can't have it all. But it decides, I believe, to register, if not a critique, then at least to register the cost of that by speaking about an alternate reality, and that alternate reality is called Olam Haba. Right? And that's in that Olam Haba, and in that world, again, it's the Holy Blessed One who will distribute these assets, right? Who will distribute these land allocations rather than human. When God does it, God finds a way, right, to take the finitude of resources and their inevitable distinctions and to somehow equalize the entire thing, which might push us to recognize the necessity of our current system, but also to also recognize its limitations. And I do think that sometimes that the way the rabbis speak about the world to come is functions, among other things, as a way of highlighting the ways in which our world is not the world to come, right? That there's a different alterity, there's a different way of imagining the world, imagining reality, which is not our world. Let's call that world Olam Haba, and then we could think about ways of perhaps making our world a bit closer to that world. And it's interesting, this narrative continues onto 123 as I scan forward and do sort of a highlight here. And there's another interesting, agadic, non-halachic conversation there. And here, let's go into the text a little bit. In the middle of that sugya, we have Rabbi Chelbo asking Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani, what did Jacob see? Ma ra'a Yaakov. What did Jacob see? That he took the status as firstborn. He took the Bechora. He took the firstborn status. He took it from Reuben, from Reuven, and gave it to Joseph. So we have this notion in the narrative in the story that Reuven, who is the firstborn of Leah and who is Jacob's firstborn son as well, loses his status in some respect as the firstborn of Jacob, and instead that status, that's a coveted status in the Bible, certainly in the book of Genesis. That status is given over to Joseph. Now, Joseph is also a firstborn, but he's a firstborn of Rachel, not the firstborn of Leah. And he's given this status. So the Talmud asks, what did he see that he took the Bechorah from Reuben and gave it to Joseph? Now the Talmud says, what do you mean, what did he see? Right? It says explicitly what he saw, right? In as much as it's written and cites the verse from Chronicles that B'challo Yitzuei Aviv, that if you remember the story where, depends how you read the story, but Reuben somehow defiled his father's couch, right? Somehow in the episode of the mandrakes, he somehow did something wrong vis-a-vis his father, associated with his father's bed, his father's couch, and due to that sin, his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph. So it's explicit in the Bible as to, why did he take it from Reuven? What did Reuven do that would make him, worthy of losing the birthright? So Chelbo says, no, what he really meant was not why he took it from Reuben, but why did he give it to Joseph? What did he see that he gave it to Joseph? And the sugya goes on to sort of address this question. I'll scan down to Rabbi Yonatan's answer. Rabbi Yonatan's answer here is, well, it was appropriate for the child receiving the status of firstborn to emerge from Rachel. As it is written, Ela Toldot Yaakov Yosef. These are the generations, or these are the Toledos, right? The primary generations, the primary progeny of Jacob. And it goes on to discuss Joseph, right? So that indicates that in a sense, Joseph is Jacob's primary progeny, says the Talmud. But what this means, I think, actually, is that throughout the story, the end of Genesis, there are two potential firstborns, right? There's Reuben, who is in one sense the firstborn. He's Jacob's firstborn, and he's the firstborn of Leah, right, his first wife. But there's also Joseph, who is an alternate potential firstborn. But Joseph is younger, right? He's younger, and not only is he younger, but his mother is the younger of the daughters. Rachel is. Right? And the Talmud goes on. You have the source sheet in the chat, and I can't go through the whole really interesting Agadah here, but you can take a look at it and review it if you haven't seen it already. View it, and if you have seen it already, then review it. But the Talmud goes on to discuss and highlight the fact that the notion of giving the firstborn status to the younger, obviously doesn't start with Joseph and Reuben, Yosef and Reuven. First of all, I think their parents, right, did the same. Rachel and Leah, right? Rachel is the younger of the two daughters. Leah is the older, and yet Rachel is the one who Jacob seems to prefer, at least on some level, right? Jacob, she's the one who he loves, and in a sense, though she's the younger, she is the primary, and her child Joseph becomes the primary firstborn over Reuven, Leah's firstborn son, in the story of Genesis. And of course, Jacob himself, right, is the younger of the two brothers of Esau and Jacob, and that has continued, and that theme continues backwards, right, throughout the book of Genesis. This is well noted that even though the firstborn is ostensibly the preferred, the primary child, throughout the book of Genesis, that gets subverted. Right? And it's the younger child who actually, even Isaac and Ishmael, right? It's the younger child, Jacob and Esau, Joseph and Reuben. It's the Ephraim and Manasseh. It's the younger child, or the younger son, Rachel and Leah, the younger daughter, who actually receives who becomes primary, who becomes the first. Okay. And I mention all of this because, again, it's not coincidental that in the midst of a sugya, an extended sugya about the laws of inheritance, heavily focused on the laws of the firstborn vis-a-vis inheritance. The firstborn is supposed to be primary. It's supposed to receive a double portion of inheritance. It's not coincidental that the problematics of that are discussed and meditated upon via these agadic sections, is these stories, these narratives in the midst of these chapters. I mean, the Bible itself, which speaks of the Bechorah, of the firstborn, the primacy of the firstborn, it's the same Torah which continuously subverts that message in its narrative sections, as others have pointed out. And I mentioned both points 1 and point 2, the prior text from the previous, daf, about this world and the next world, as well as this page, just to highlight a thread that we're seeing in these pages, right? An overarching meta theme, which is, in as much as the laws of Yeshnochlon and Manchilim, the laws of inheritance, have not only their logic but also their clear benefit, right? I would say perhaps their clear necessity, right? Not all is true, and it's taken quite seriously by the Talmud. Nonetheless, and at the same time, the Talmud, in its inimitable way and inimitable manner, continuously reveals to us that these are not the only ways of thinking about how inheritance should work, how inheritance might work, how it might be enacted. Okay? And this is, I think, very much worth highlighting. And on that point, let me go to a third part of our dapim, which is from 126. So we're scanning from 122 and 123 and 126. And let me just read you a little bit of sugya here in our closing 7 or so minutes. The Mishnah says as follows. Mishnah says that in the case of one who says, let's imagine a father who says, my son, ish ploni b'ni b'chor, my son, who is my firstborn son, so he acknowledges the kid's, biological relationship and his primary biological relationship to the father. Even though he's my bechor, he's my firstborn, he will not take the double portion. Lo yitol pishnaim, he will not take the double portion of my estate. Or let's say someone says, so and so, my son, called the son, I don't know, Levi or Simeon or Shimon or something, will not inherit my estate among his brothers. So let's say someone makes that kind of some condition, right, to their estate. So the Mishnah teaches, lo amar kalum, he has said nothing. There's no legal teeth or efficacy or standing to what he has said, because he has hitna alma shekatuv Torah. He has made a tanai, a stipulation, a condition, which is counter to that which is written in the Torah. He is what as the rabbis say, matna alma shekatuv Torah. He has made a stipulation or condition contrary to the parameters, that which is written in the Torah. The Torah says that when one has a firstborn son, that son is to receive a double portion, that the brothers must all inherit equally amongst each other besides that double portion. Okay, but that this person says, I'm going to engage in inheritance, I'm going to bequeath to my sons, but not fully. Right, I'm going to make a condition against those parameters of the Torah. Lo amar klum. There's no standing to this. Okay, so this is what the Mishnah teaches. Okay, mata mashkatu Torah. Lo amar klum. He makes a condition against stipulation against what the Torah's parameters. He hasn't said anything. So Talmud says, wait a minute. That's the only way of thinking about this. That's the only voice. Let's say the Mishnah is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Judah. Does that mean our Mishnah, and we actually rule like Rabbi Judah, in this matter? Because Rabbi Judah has said, and this is a principle you should know, Rabbi Judah says that, yeah, it's true that if one makes a condition contrary to the parameters which the Torah stipulates, that condition doesn't hold. That's true. But with regards to monetary matters, and Yerusha, inheritance is about monetary assets. With regards to monetary assets, there's an exception. He says, Kol tanai shebamamon kayam, that any stipulation with regards to monetary matters, that stipulation would work. When it comes to monetary issues, and they're going to give an example from a different area of Jewish law. Very Judah, as opposed to Rabbi Meir, thinks that that condition should stand. Okay, Very Judah says, for example, let's say a man says to a woman from Kiddushin, right, you are hereby betrothed to me on the condition that you have no ability to claim from me the things which the Torah has stipulated you have a right to claim from a husband, food and clothing and conjugal rights. So Rabbi Meir says she's betrothed to him, but the condition is void because he's going into the stipulations of the Torah. Right? Judah says, well, with regards to the monetary matters in that trio, i.e., food and clothing, leave alone conjugal rights, it does stand. Okay, so assumedly in our Mishnah also, Very Judah's opinion, which is the opinion we really rule like, Very Judah's opinion should be that if someone says my son shall inherit, my firstborn son will inherit, but not a double portion, it should hold, right? Because it's a monetary matter. So the Talmud says not necessarily. Says the Talmud, maybe not. Afilu tim Rabbi Yehuda, even Rabbi Judah could agree in our case that it doesn't hold. Why? Because in the case of the would-be wife, the betrothed wife, she knew and she waived her rights. That the avakam when the man says to her, marry me on condition that you don't have access, you can't have no claims again for these things, and she assented to marry him. So then she said, okay, I'm going to waive my rights to those things. I'm going to waive my rights, and right, she out of her own autonomous agreement has waived her rights, and that's why it's valid. But in this case, with the firstborn, he's not waiving anything. This is nothing, no one's asking him at all. And if that's the case, if you don't have access to his waiving of the rights, so the stipulation is not valid. And I want to end with our time together with just noting the following. First of all, the very fact that the Talmud is raising the cases of making stipulations about inheritance, which are not in accordance with the stipulations of the Torah sets out in theory, continues our theme, right? That there might be other ways of imagining the rules of inheritance, right? Even though we have contra to the system that's being laid out here, and people may have an interest in actually going that way, right? An interest in doing it in a different manner. But I also want to note that you have this debate between Rabbi Judah and Rabbi Meir. What exactly are they arguing about? So if you look into this, you'll see that there's different ways of understanding what they're arguing about. One way of thinking about they're arguing about, and then we'll close in a minute or two. One way of thinking about what Judah and Meir are arguing about is the whether or not we make room for this waiving, this mechila, this forgiveness on the part of the recipient of the condition. Judah seems to think that with regards to monetary matters, yeah, if the person, let's say the would-be wife, if she agrees, okay, you don't have to provide food and clothing to me, for whatever reason she says she's willing to waive her claim to those rights. If she's willing to do it, then fine, we're going to respect that. After all, it's meant to benefit her anyway, assumedly. So why not waive it? And really, the question then becomes, what's Rabbi Meir thinking? Why is it that Rabbi Meir seems to think that even if someone waives their rights, or we assume they would waive their rights, we don't make room for that and say that the condition holds. And what I want to suggest here is that Rabbi Meir may be thinking, it's not clear exactly, it's hard to know, but Rabbi Meir may be thinking here that there's always unforeseen consequences, right? You may think that by respecting her right, or let's say to waive her right to waive rights, where claiming you're respecting her autonomy and actually helping, you actually may be hurting more broadly. Because if you have a situation in which people can waive their rights and claims, then you open the door to pressure other people in other scenarios to do the same. But if, on the other hand, you say, or other scenarios where a would-be husband will say, yeah, but we're only going to get betrothed, right? If you quote unquote autonomously, waive your rights, pressure her, right, to waive those rights. If on the other hand, we say there's no such thing, so then she'll never be under such pressure. She can say, yeah, I would love to waive my rights to that, but can't do it. Then the kedushin, the marriage won't hold. My point just being that reliance upon, or how should I say this, respecting the individual's autonomous ability to waive their rights, which Yehuda seems to be championing according to this understanding, it obviously has some great nobility to it, but Rabbi Meir may be cautioning us to take a look at for the unforeseen consequences, as the sages say, who is a wise one who sees the future, is who tries to pay attention to the consequences which might emerge in the future. Okay, thank you very much. It's great to be with you very briefly. I wish it was more time, and hope to see you again.
Thank you, Rabbi Kelson. It is really fast. And thank you for joining us and taking on this challenge. It was lovely to have you. Thank you to all of you for joining us as always. And we will see you now that Thursday is not Chag for the foreseeable future. We will see you again in this space in exactly a week's time. We'll see you then. Bye.